Hello and welcome to another historic video. Today we're playing Oops All Goyfs with this Jund colored Tarmogoyf deck that's using the new Goyfs that were recently introduced in the Arena Anthology expansion, as well as some other cards like these various Planeswalkers that were included in the Anthology as well. So plenty of new cards to be excited about. First we'll take a look at the original Tarmogoyf, a 2-mana creature with power equal to the number of card types among cards in all graveyards. Toughness is equal to that number +1. So as a quick reminder, a nice mnemonic device I like to use to remember all the different card types nowadays is Pickle Abs. P stands for Planeswalker, I is Instant, C is Creature, K Kindred, L Land, E is Enchantment, then A is Artifact, B Battle, and finally S for Sorcery. So that's how you can remember all 9 types. So we can potentially end up with a 9/10 Tarmogoyf in this deck, which is pretty large for just 2 mana. And then we also have the more recent Nethergoyf, which is essentially a 1-mana Tarmogoyf, but it only looks at our own graveyard to add up all those types as opposed to also looking at the opponent's. And we can also escape Nethergoyf out of our graveyard by paying 3 mana and exiling at least 4 card types from among the graveyard, so that can still leave us with a decently sized Nethergoyf. And then more recently, we've gotten Barrowgoyf, which has the same Tarmogoyf stat line, also checks the opponent's graveyard, has Death Touch and Lifelink, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we may mill that many cards. If we do, we may put a creature card from among them into our hand, so it can also provide a nice bit of card advantage, help find our other Goyfs. And then an excellent finisher for the archetype is Pyrogoyf, which is once again a Tarmogoyf in stat line, and then when it enters or another Lurgoyf creature we control enters, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. So that can be an awesome way to clear opposing creatures, but it can also go face to get the game over with. And then I'm also trying a singleton copy of Disa the Restless, a 5-mana 5/6, usually played in Commander, but we're trying it out as a one-off in Constructed here. Says whenever a Lurgoyf permanent card is put into our graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, we get to put it onto the battlefield. Have a few ways to mill creatures or discard them from hand as a way to reanimate them essentially. And then whenever one or more creatures we control deal combat damage to a player, we get to create a Tarmogoyf token. So that's also pretty neat, getting a token that's essentially the 2-mana version of Tarmogoyf. And then we're also running a one-off Altar of the Goyf to complete the whole theme as a 5-mana Kindred artifact. So as you may remember, that's 2 separate types to count towards growing Tarmogoyf and Delirium. Says whenever a creature we control attacks alone, it gets +X/+X, where X is the number of card types among cards in all graveyards, and Lurgoyf creatures we control have Trample, so that can also come in handy. But this is another card we don't mind milling or discarding, as once again it adds 2 separate types. And then our new Planeswalkers include a Ren and 6, can come down and deal 1 damage to any target with a -1, or we can plus it, returning up to 1 target land card from our graveyard to our hand. This shines especially in formats where we have a lot of fetch lands, only have Prismatic Vista in Historic as a fetch land we get to maybe recycle out of the graveyard, so it's not quite as exciting here as it may be in other formats, but we also have the Nurturing Peatland, which can also be sacrificed to draw a card, so in a long grindy game that can also be quite synergistic with Ren and 6, plus we have additional ways to maybe mill cards into the graveyard, so Ren can still get plenty of value with a +1, and it also just adds a cheap Planeswalker into the mix, which can also power up our Goyfs. And then Grist, the Hunger Tide, actually counts as a creature in addition to its other types if it's not on the battlefield. So then if it's in the graveyard, it's both a Planeswalker and a creature, which is pretty useful. Then the +1 helps us mill a card in addition to making a 1/1 insect token. The -2 lets us maybe sacrifice one of those insects to destroy a creature or Planeswalker. And then the -5 can also be game ending since we're actively going to be filling our graveyard. Then we also have 2 copies of Invasion of Asgol as the only battle in the deck. Just wanted to make sure to include at least 1 so we could live the dream of getting to the maximum power Tarmogoyf. And then when it enters, makes the opponent sacrifice a creature or Planeswalker, so it can be pretty effective against the Aura strategies, which often only have 1 massive creature in play. And then if we transform the battle, we get the Ashen Reaper as a menace creature that can also pick up additional +1 counters. And then a Bitter Blossom is a Kindred enchantment. If we cast it, we'll will make a 1/1 fairy rogue token with flying each turn at the cost of 1 life, but we're mostly hoping to mill or discard it, so we add several types at once. And Fear of Missing Out is an excellent way to do so, as a 2/3 creature, when it enters, discards a card and then draws, has multiple types itself, and can easily get to Delirium, at which point the Fear can help us attack with 1 creature twice, which is especially powerful if we have a large Goyf in play. Malevolent Rumble, one of the better ways to mill cards in this format, as we get to reveal the top 4, get to put a permanent from among them into our hand, and then the rest into our graveyard, making a spawn token in the process, which can maybe help us ramp, could set up a turn 3 Tarmogoyf, for instance, and it's also a great way to enable Revolt on Fatal Push, which is the only instant in this deck, but a very good removal spell in any format, so that can deal with opposing creatures. And then Thoughtseize is going to be pretty important against opposing combo decks specifically, which we can be pretty soft against, especially graveyard combo decks, since we don't have any main deck graveyard hate, but taking away an opposing card also adds an extra type in their graveyard, which can also maybe contribute towards our Goyfs. And then the mana base also includes a few artifact lands, since as you may have noticed we only have Altar of the Goyf as a spell that's an artifact, so to get a few more artifacts into the mix I'm playing a one-off Vault of Whispers, Great Furnace also recently added through Anthology, and Tree of Tales, so we've got one of each of the artifact lands that we're hoping to mill. Then we also have a couple basics, since we need to be able to find those with Prismatic Vista, which is the only good fetch land in the format. Wish I could play more Vistas, but then we would also need to play more basics, and there just isn't enough room if we want a consistent mana base. And then, of course, we mentioned the peat lands, which can also maybe draw and end up in the graveyard. And then we've got a few fast lands to round things out. Black fast lands make sense since we're mostly casting black 1-drops, and then Stomping Ground, so we still have a few untapped lands past turn 3. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw. We have a 1-lander that really needs a second land for Rumble. Although if we get there, this hand's pretty decent. Although still not amazing. I'll take a mulligan. This seems better. Turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 Rumble. Probably do need a third land when Ren can maybe get one back out of the graveyard. Opponent blue-red, wizards maybe. So an aggressive creature deck. Don't love dealing myself damage. Flame could also hit our artifact lands for what it's worth, but don't have one in circulation. Balmor is pretty scary in its own right. Maybe I take Balmor, hope they don't draw another cheap wizard, and then next turn Invasion can take our Soulscar Mage, and then Flame may only get one mode. It's a long shot, but Balmor's still going to be a problem as a flying threat. Opponent shocking themselves for a Reckless Charge. So we're taking 6, but they don't have another wizard at the moment. Thoughtseize can now also take the Flame. I think I still deal with the Soulscar Mage first. Not too many 1-toughness wizards for Ren to snipe. Alright, so now our opponent can Flame to just draw 2. I think I still want to Rumble to try and hit my land drop and hopefully find black for Thoughtseize. Alright, can grab a Blooming Marsh, save myself some damage, add creature and enchantment to the graveyard as well. So our opponent gets to draw 2, but then I get to take their best card. And Balmor's the only option, so the opponent's hand's not too threatening at the moment, but we are at 10, so it doesn't take much, especially with a Reckless Charge and maybe a flying creature. But we can cast Tarmogoyf now. Opponent just makes some hasty 1/1s. And drew Altar of the Goyf, so would love a discard outlet. Ren does have a land to return, but still want to Tarmogoyf instead. And then I think we just go face. Could also transform the invasion, I suppose. Maybe that makes more sense. Yeah, since it would immediately pick up a +1 counter as well. Give me an extra blocker. Bitter Blossom is painful, although it does provide flying blockers, although I guess with Balmor giving trample, that doesn't matter. So, yeah, Balmor is pretty scary here. Gotta hope to top deck a Fatal Push. Wizard's Lightning goes face. So that kind of forces a trade. Although next turn, charge on Balmor is still 5 damage. So, yeah, I need to top deck an answer right now, and Tarmogoyf is actually an answer, thanks to the Tarmogoyf. If I attack first, we can't threaten lethal by going face, so... And also wasn't gonna shock myself to go Ren, get back Stomping Ground, play Goyf. Because they are running Wizard's Lightning. Giganta in hand. That card is beatable, and yeah, we've got 12 damage coming across, even drew with a Fatal Push at long last. But that'll do it, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Our hand's got a couple Fatal Pushes, a couple Tarmogoyfs. So hopefully we find a few more ways to fill the graveyard. Opponent on Eldrazi. So keeping the fetch land to enable Revolt is important to take out some of their 3 and 4 mana creatures. As we see Matter Reshaper, as well as a Warping Whale. So I'm gonna have to fetch next turn to play Fear. Opponent just with a couple Adventurous Inns and an Idol of False Gods. For now I do think I want to play the Fear. And then maybe one Fatal Push can go. Thoughtseize is a bit more useful. So they haven't drawn their Eldrazi Temple yet, which is the big payoff. They do appear to be on a colorless build. Malevolent Rumble can enable Revolt on Fatal Push to maybe help take out the Flesh Raker. I think this turn it still makes sense to go Thoughtseize and then take away some scary 4-drop. And then Tarmogoyf can hopefully clean up the Flesh Raker before it does too much damage. Our opponent is playing Echoes of Eternity, so they are going big. And this card is both an enchantment as well as a kindred card, so that adds 2 relevant types for our various Goyfs. So that seems worth taking. We should be able to handle the creatures. Even though taking the Devourer as a removal spell for Tarmogoyf also makes sense. So we can Rumble, getting... If I don't select Tarmogoyf, it adds creature to the graveyard. Although our opponent's gonna soon have a creature in there anyways. So I think I still like taking the Goyf. And then we don't quite have Delirium yet, which we could have achieved by leaving Tarmogoyf in the graveyard. But now we can just spam Tarmogoyfs and Tarmogoyfs to hopefully take care of all the opponent's threats. So double Flesh Raker. Can also start making tokens. Take 2. Alright, so by sacking this pawn, I can play Tarmogoyf and enable Revolt on Fatal Push to take out another Flesh Raker if we'd like. So the idol's picking up counters. Still pretty far from being active. Next turn we get to play another Tarmogoyf, so that's 12 damage potentially to the opponent's face. Opponent makes another spawn token. They have gained 6 life with their lands, and now that heralds the end, so they are realistically gonna cast a Devourer next turn, as we draw Altar of the Goyf. Also a decent card, but it's gotta be another Tarmogoyf here. So close to having Delirium, which would be even more damage. So maybe it is worth it to just take out their creatures here, so they're unable to cast Devour even if they draw land. I guess Eldrazi Temple would still let them cast it. Definitely take out it that heralds. And then, yeah, maybe going face is still worthwhile. There's a non-zero chance they chum block, but I doubt it. Alright, opponent does jump. So then even if they draw land, they're unable to cast Devour unless that land is specifically Eldrazi Temple. And with another Tarmogoyf in hand, that would be 12 damage just from it entering. We are taking some damage from the Flesh Rakers as well, and now Grist. So, yeah, cannot quite get to Delirium with Grist unless we mill something useful. Altar of the Goyf could also give a Tarmogoyf Trample, but just casting the Tarmogoyf seems like the easiest option, as that'll trigger double Tarmogoyf. So then if I just take care of both of their creatures, we can attack for lethal, or we can just deal 12 and then attack and have at least 2 going through. Alright. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the play, up against a Lourdes deck. So we're gonna probably need some creature interaction. Got a turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 Fear or Rumble, so not a bad start. But we may need to draw some additional creature interaction. So finding our Tarmogoyf would be ideal. Alright, opponent's a red-white, so kind of an energy, a Ajani build. We've got Thraben Charm, exile any number of target players' graveyards, that's a problem. Got Static Prison, which can remove a creature. Ajani, always threatening. So, yeah, a couple problems we need to deal with, although Thraben Charm might be, long-term, the biggest problem, exiling our graveyard. And now Renin 6, a lovely answer to the headliner. So not gonna pass up on that opportunity. Rumble might mill a land, that Ren can also return, and then I can still play Fear afterwards. Our opponent runs out of Bombardment for now, and we drew another Thoughtseize. So step 1, probably still Rumble. Hope to mill a land, so Ren can get it back, we did not. Although I can let an altar go to the graveyard, grab a Tarmogoyf. And then Ren can just plus here, get some more loyalty. And then I might want to Thoughtseize, take away a Ajani, since that's incredibly scary with the bombardment. Alright. So sadly have to submit 0. We have Delirium for Fear, so we can maybe double spell some 2-mana creatures next turn. Alright, opponent does answer Ren, so maybe they drew another 1 toughness creature. And ENT. Ooh, Tarmogoyf is a good one too. Could start there, as opposed to double spelling, although the spawn token is under threat by the bombardment, so maybe I should make use of that mana while I can. So let me play Fear, discard Nethergoyf, and then depending on what we draw, likely go for Tarmogoyf. Another Fear. Yeah, I think I still Tarmogoyf. Maybe we can empty our hand before playing the last Fear, so we get to draw a card for free. Opponent pays an energy to keep Ren in exile, and has another Static Prison. That maybe explains why they were okay exiling the Planeswalker that wasn't doing a whole lot. ENT discards an Ocelot, which I guess is not that great in the face of a Ren and 6. So we take 3, and yeah, we're in decent shape. Although we do have to watch out for Lurrus, which our opponent can play next turn already, getting back the headliner at the very least. So I get to hit for 4, play a Tarmogoyf, and then that can hopefully take over, at the very least stop ENT from hitting us. But yeah, if Lurrus can get back a Jani, this game is gonna take a turn for the worse. Time is ticking down for the Static Prisons at least, so opponent's gonna make a choice if they want to get rid of any of them. If we didn't have a Tarmogoyf protecting Ren, they could technically give it back and then attack it to remove it right away. So maybe that's part of their plan. Alright, there's Lurrus. And replay Static Prison, I guess, works too. Exile the Tarmogoyf now. And then they can finish off Ren. Yeah, Lurrus plus Prison is a pretty annoying combo too. So we would really like to find an answer to the companion before it takes over. So might have to just go for a Rumble. And then if I use the token to play Fear, I could still draw into a Fatal Push. I'll start here. Alright, Tarmogoyf, I'm close to casting. So if I grab that, and then just stay put, next turn I can take out Lurrus. But they will have an Ajani in place, so... yeah, I don't think I can grab Tarmogoyf and cast it. Need to get the Tarmogoyf. Could go for Nethergoyf here as well, since if I play Fear, I would have to discard the Tarmogoyf. So Fear can attack. But now it's probably going to play defense. And then can I escape Nethergoyf without hurting my types? So I need to exile any number of other cards with 4 or more card types from among them. So we already have Kindreds times 2. Only have the 1 artifact or enchantments. But I guess that's maybe still worthwhile. And then I can go sorcery plus 1 creature. Should be fine. Although I guess we only have the 2 creatures, but our opponent's got a bunch. So exile Bitter Blossom, since Fear is more likely to end up in the graveyard. Sorcery, we have multiples, and then I guess Planeswalker's fine too. Alright, that seems okay. Could have also waited on Nether Goyf until after we play Paragoyf, but that's unlikely to stay in play for long. So their opponent gets to do their thing with the Ajani. Transform it right away. With Paragoyf in play, if they sacrifice Static Prison, I would get a Goyf back and at least get an extra trigger. So Ajani transforms. Makes a token, gets to deal 3 to the Fear, which grows Nether Goyf again, so we get an enchantment in the graveyard. We're dead on board if they have an answer to the Nether Goyf. Alright, drew a Fatal Push, which I cannot quite use unless maybe I sack the peatland, then we have Revolt to answer Lurrus. So let's say we go face with Nether Goyf, our opponent's forced to jump. They can deal 1 with Bombardment, I'm at 8. Paragoyf finishes off Lurrus, that's another 1, we're at 7. Then are we dead to Ajani next turn? Possibly, but I think it's still my best chance. And then I think I still attack with another Goyf since we need to whittle away at the opponent's defenses. And it is a little suspicious that they still have 2 cards in hand, so we'll see. I guess I also take 1 for my Pain Land, so that also adds up. If our opponent had 1 fewer energy, going face could present lethal with a Goyf coming back and triggering Paragoyf again. So we're at 6. And Ajani making a token is another 2 damage. 3, 4, so yeah, opponent doesn't need much to cross the finish line. They are down to 0 energy at least. We're at 4, virtual 2 life. And next turn, assuming we get our Goyfs back, Paragoyf can likely burn them out. So yeah, if we're not dead yet at this point, maybe we've got a chance. Inti attacks, hoping to top deck, discarding a land. And draws Esper Sentinel, that's 1 more damage. Although they would still need 1 extra point somewhere. So is their last card a creature? If so, we're dead. Play Sentinel, keeping us in suspense. Get to untap, alright. So now what's the best course of action? I can Fatal Push, take out the Sentinel, can pay the 1, and then still play Fear. Just gotta make sure not to tap the peatland. So we fall to 2. Can play Fear, draw a card, and then an attack. Should put the opponent to 4. Could also finish off Ajani if we really wanted to. Any reason not to attack with Paragoyf? I doubt it. If they have a way to destroy a tapped creature or an attacking creature, I guess I could not attack just to get the triggers next turn. But if they have a way to generate energy, then I guess that's something worth considering. If they have the Galvanic Discharge, they can make energy and not spend it to still keep the Goyfs in exile. So then I should probably go after Ajani. If I send both at Ajani, then that cannot kill me next turn. I still have Fear to block the Cat Warrior. And if they don't have anything and I get my Goyfs back, this is still lethal regardless. since we get 2 triggers. But of course they can still discharge, keep the Goyfs, and then top deck another creature for the win. So yeah, they actually had it. Good for 2 energy. So did they top deck a creature? They did. Alright, GG's. Incredibly close game. So, had I just attacked their face, they could have kept Ajani alive, and then Ajani would have killed us too, so I don't think there was anything we could really do too differently. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a functional hand. Could use more ways to fill the graveyard to grow Nether Goyf, because right now it's just a baby. So Fear of Missing Out, discard Bitter Blossom would be a nice sequence. Malevolent Rumble would be great. Our opponent playing a 1 toughness creature would be acceptable. Tapped Stomping Ground, and there's a Fear. So casting Bitter Blossom could also be reasonable. But usually it's a little slow in most matchups. So I think I'm going Fear, discard Bitter Blossom, add 2 types right away. Which is also good for Delirium. And hit you for 2. So now we've got a lot of creature interaction. Not sure if that's going to be useful in this matchup. Shifting Woodland points towards an Omniscience combo deck. And yeah, there's the namesake card. So if they get to Delirium, which they're well on their way, Woodland turns into Omniscience, and then our opponent pretty much wins the game. So Thoughtseize is potentially a useful piece of interaction, although it could also enable Delirium for them. They already have a creature, so Ren sniping the Wayfinder doesn't change anything. Is there a world where I Thoughtseize myself? I guess between Thoughtseize and Fatal Push we already get to Delirium, although it wouldn't be this turn. Yeah, maybe we don't play Ren and just push and Thoughtseize. That way I do get to Delirium right now, and we get to attack for a lot more. So let's Thoughtseize first, since that's going to happen no matter what, I think. Our opponent had Pyroclasm, Haywire Might. So the Might we can Fatal Push. The Might also cannot target my Fear of Missing Out since it's a creature. So we can take Pyroclasm, even though it does add sorcery for Delirium. But they could also just cast it to get there. And then push as opposed to Ren, which normally would be the more intuitive play. Alright, so if nothing changes, next turn we would have lethal, with push clearing the Might. Opponent needs 4 mana to activate Woodland, and currently, even with Omniscience in play, it's not like they get to go off. I guess there's Boseiju to worry about, which can actually destroy my Fear of Missing Out, so I hadn't thought of that. So they're not actually dead yet. Unless they play the Might. So that worked out. Fatal Push your Haywire Might. Opponent, I guess, gains 3, but with Ren we should have just enough. Plus we get to add lands to the graveyard as well. So that's an attack for 12, and then one more from Ren is not even going to be needed. Alright, sweet. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Our hand has a curve. 1, 2, 3. Not sure yet if we're keeping Disa or discarding her. Opponent on the red-white kind of energy deck, maybe missing the energy cards, but Bombardment good with Ajani. Esper Sentinel, I maybe let them keep, since we can also maybe snipe it with a Renin 6. And then Amped Raptor as kind of the guaranteed 2-for-1 is the scariest card in my opinion. even though taking bombardment, adding enchantments to the graveyard could also be useful. For now, I think I still discard a land over Disa, since we already have creature in the graveyard. And maybe discard the peatland, since long term this might deal me more damage. Opponent plays a bombardment. And Grist isn't bad. So for now just attack, play Tarmogoyf, but next turn we can likely grow it some more. Bombardment is a pretty neat combo with Voice of Victory. If you attack, you can sack those tokens before they go away. And I can also deny the lifelink from Tarmogoyf by chumping and sacrificing to deal 1 damage. So there's the voice. And the headliner as well. And drew a Blooming Marsh. That one's tapped, unfortunately. Could be my last chance to Thoughtseize, or we can just keep it to at some point discard. But for now, playing Grists to maybe enable Delirium is reasonable. Would need to mill a card that has several types. And at Fatal Push. Alright, so in that case, do I still bother attacking with a Tarmogoyf? Opponent could jump and then take out the 1/1. I think it's still worth a shot. Alright, and we get to mill 4, adding Planeswalker, Kindred, Enchantment. So Tarmogoyf now is 7/8 all of a sudden. And we're not too far from playing Disa. Thalia is acceptable, so probably going to see an attack. Everyone at Grist. So yeah, Grist is very dead. They can use Headliner to deal damage to a creature, but it's not quite enough to take out Tarmogoyf at least. Unless they also, I guess, use it in conjunction with a bombardment, then anything is possible. So I guess I could double block the voice, but then they just need 1 token to shoot the insect to save it. So then, what's the obvious block? Something along these lines. So they can sort of choose, take out the Tarmogoyf or deal with Grist. And maybe some other creatures. Alright, they're gonna keep Headliner alive for now. And go after Fear of Missing Out. So they're not trying to take out Tarmogoyf. And Grist is still alive. And now Fatal Push could also clear Thalia, so Tarmogoyf is guaranteed to connect. So I don't want to make a token first. Although, let's see, Headliner can also activate, I suppose, but only damages creatures. They will deal with Thalia. Then Tarmogoyf can attack, and gaining us a lot of life in the process. And then now Grist can make a token. Found another Goyf as well. So we can play that. And yeah, Tarmogoyf up to 9 power, so we've got the maximum number of types in graveyard. And our opponent scoops it up. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Opponent is running a Lurrus as companion. So yeah, we've got a keepable hand. Turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 Fear, can maybe discard Altar, adding Artifact and Kindred as an extra type. So black-white, a life gain it seems. Path to Exile can be a decent answer to our creatures. Ocelot Pride going wide potentially stops our invasion from being effective, and I guess so does the Marionette Apprentice. So yeah, interesting spot. Could just take Path to Exile, hope they play Ocelot first, and then I can use Invasion to get rid of it. Unlikely to work out, but I think I still take the Path. Also adds instant to the graveyard, which helps us with our Goyfs. Alright, opponent does run out Ocelot, so I'm not gonna mess around and just play the Invasion. And then next turn Tarmogoyf looks good. Now our opponent can Trumpet while triggering Apprentice and maybe the Cleric. But still good to get it going here, I think. Could have maybe saved my fetch land to enable Revolt on Fatal Push if we need to take out Lurrus specifically. But that still seems pretty far away. And in the meantime, Tarmogoyf has lifelink, so can maybe make up for some of the life we're about to lose. Alright, never mind. Opponent had a Fragment Reality. At least we get a Nether Goyf in return, but yeah, still a pretty big setback. Did draw another Fatal Push. So I don't think I'm keeping Altar. Might have to shock myself if I want a double Fatal Push here, which isn't a bad plan. Or I can just play the Fear, play tapped Stomping Ground, and then push once. Because I might want to keep on for Lurrus. Alright, found a Malevolent Rumble. Could also be worth casting, but maybe I save myself the damage. For now I can also transform the Invasion, which gives us another creature. So this gets a +1 counter if a permanent was put into a graveyard from the battlefield, so extra incentive to use Fatal Push. Yeah, maybe I do push the Cleric here. So Reaper picks up a counter. And then next turn Fear plus Nether Goyf also represents a lot of damage. Opponent's got a Guide of Souls, that one's scary if it gets to 4 energy in Historic, as it's the nerfed version compared to 3 energy in Timeless. Step 1, Rumble. Finding another Fear. Could Rumble sacking the spawn token. And then I have to decide if I keep up Push or Red for Fear. Probably keep up Red. And then want the artifact to end up in the graveyard. Don't particularly need to draw it. Yeah, can just grab the Cliffs, play it tapped. Or I can discard it to the Fear. Although keeping the spawn token is a good way to enable Revolt, although our opponent hasn't put Lurrus in hand yet. So, interesting spots. Probably start by attacking. Opponent takes it. So Nether Goyf can attack again. And then I think I will be playing Fear, discarding Cliffs. Alright, play out the Blooming Marsh, and then next turn we can Fatal Push to hopefully clear a path. Amalia is a scarier one. And Raise the Past on top, so that's what they're working towards, but since they're missing line 4, they can't keep it. They could already have a Raise the Past in hand. So that's now the concern. Can I threaten lethal? So yeah, what's our sequencing here? Can just attack, untap Nether Goyf and Reaper. They get to attack again. Fatal Push can hit the Apprentice, maybe, before we attack. Or we can go for Amalia. Then Apprentice will trigger again. Yeah, if they ever raise the past, we're in trouble. Because it would get all that stuff back. And I don't think we survive that. So my only hope is to just Fatal Push and go for the kill here. Double block and jump. And then they can jump again. And fall to 2. But then we die to erase the past. So yeah, let's see if they have it. I imagine they do. Yep. And now with the Starscape Cleric triggers, they have lethal. So yeah, we just needed one extra spell basically to present lethal. A little bit more damage. Couldn't find our other Goyfs. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Our hands could use some red mana, because if Fear discards Bitter Blossom, we all of a sudden get some pretty big Barrow-Goyfs. Without red mana, this hand's pretty weak. Yeah, just casting a Bitter Blossom on turn 2 is not quite as good. So I think I got a mulligan. This one we can keep. And then maybe ditch one Fatal Push. Opponent's not playing a Companion. If they were playing a Lurrus, I would probably keep double Fatal Push. So with a Swamp I cannot cast it, turn 2 Renin 6. So maybe I do play a tapped Stomping Ground first, as opposed to keeping up Push. And then the plan's probably still to Rumble first. Alright, opponent's on Eldrazi with an Ugin's Labyrinth. So they can cast a 2-drop, but they don't. Gotta find a land here. We did not, ouch. Well, in that case, Tarmogoyf's the only card I can cast that's somewhat impactful. At least we did mill Artifact and Kindred, so that helps. So 4/5 Tarmogoyf, big enough to tussle with a Thought-Knot Seer. Another Ugin's Labyrinth. Do they have another 7 mana card to pitch to it? They do. So yeah, we could see a turn 2 Thought-Knot, take the Tarmogoyf. They don't. And we draw a land. So now we have a couple options, including playing Paragoyf first. Yeah, I think I like that. And then I can follow up with a couple more Goyfs after. But at least we have removal in play. So even if they Thought-Knot, we can still find an answer to it. Possible they have Kozilek's Command to shrink it down. So far so good. Now Blast Zone. So they have 5 mana. Opponent does nothing. So I can attack, play Barrow-Goyf. Opponent's considering doing something, but they're kind of holding back. I'm just gonna jam. And that's another 4 damage. And then since it's the Barrow-Goyf dealing damage with the Paragoyf trigger, we also gain 4 life, so that's another neat synergy. So what can our opponent come up with? They know about another Tarmogoyf in hand. And our opponent scoops it up, alright, so despite a lot of mana, they weren't able to use it. So we got to see this Jund Goyf deck in action, and I was not expecting great results going into these games, but the deck definitely exceeded my expectations. Was especially pleasantly surprised by the Tarmogoyf being an excellent removal spell and finisher, and yeah, overall the deck seems pretty good at getting to Delirium and adding lots of types to the graveyard, which is usually the main challenge when playing a deck around Tarmogoyf. So yeah, the deck is definitely not going to be tier 1 in the meta. It's going to struggle against some of the graveyard combo decks, at least with the current setup, although that could potentially be fixed in a best of 3 setting once you get to bring in cards like Surgical Extraction as essentially a free instant that can disrupt the opponent's graveyard plan. But at the same time, in best of 3 you're also going to have to deal with opposing graveyard hate shrinking down your Goyfs, so you will need to come up with a plan to beat those cards as well. But in general, these Goyfs seem pretty powerful, so if you build your deck around it, you can expect some decent results. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.